Code of conduct.
Heavy is the head that wears the crown. I put in extra work that just can't be found. I took the sword out the stone, wasn't a thing. Look me in my eyes cause I'm a king. Look me in my eyes cause I'm a king. God made me punch in accurate numbers. My castle won't crumble. What I tackle will fumble. I've been a leader when they ain't see it, but now my feet is up. According to me, royalty didn't end with King Tut. Crown on my head, clouds is at my legs. Big says sky is the limit. I look down on the ledge. I push the bar like I'm opening a cell. Hands in my cookie jar, you won't come out with a single nail. I need all of mine. The weight of my shoulders won't fit on a scale. What's a king to a giant? Well, Goliath fell. Even if we playin' chess, dog, this king can't be checked. I make all my moves on the board, I invented my steps. I'm a king, the blood of a ruler. I feel like Mansa Musa. Make your squad disappear like landing by the Bermuda. Triangle, look at it from my angle. I'm a king, the closest thing to being one of God's angels. Yeah, I'm a king. Heavy is the head that wears the crown. I put in extra work that just can't be found. I took the sword out the stone, wasn't a thing.
Shout out to Richard Rush, always in the building.
I'm a king. Look me in my eyes cause I'm a king.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. This is the Code of Conduct with the King podcast. I am your host, Jay Spence the King. And listen, this is going to be an episode, okay? Before my man Ty gets in, this is going to be an episode. I got a couple guys joining me, but I just got to talk my talk for a minute. Did y'all see my, first of all, go Yanks, you know what I mean? Let's get it. But forget today. Did y'all see Sunday? Did y'all see Sunday? I done already told everybody, look, they don't let the wrong team win in the wrong stadium on the wrong Sunday. Going into a bye week, they didn't want this to happen. I'm gonna just tell you, they did not want this to happen. Is my quarterback not the doggone MVP? Is he not? Is Josh Allen not the MVP? Tell me right now, if Josh Allen ain't the MVP, who's the MVP in the league? And shout out to my man Brian Daboll, but I tell you what, even on that discussion, is Coach McDermott not the coach of the year? Is Brandon Beane not the GM of the year? Y'all got me messed up. I'm gonna bring my man Dwayne in real quick. Because if I go like this, I'm not gonna bring him in on time. So I'm gonna bring him in, and we gonna talk together. We gonna talk that talk together. So my man Daniel was co-host. He's one half of the Two Goalies and One Mic podcast. This brother got something going on that I feel really good about, and I'm happy to be able to talk to him. What is going on, Dwayne?
Hey man, thanks for connecting with me. I appreciate you having me on your podcast. I'm a big fan.
Man, thank you. I appreciate the time, and I appreciate everything that you're doing. Before I bring up what you're doing, though, what about this doggone game Sunday, man? Like
the Bill. Oh, buddy. Listen, it's like anybody who was a doubter of Josh Allen or the Buffalo Bills before Sunday are no longer doubters, right? It's for me. I wasn't even, honestly, God, and I wholeheartedly mean this. I was more scared of Baltimore than I was the Kansas City Chiefs. I have so much faith in this defense, seeing what they've been able to do with the depleted roster. Since the start of the season, essentially, no Tre'Davious White, and just the dominance on defense that they've had, and what they did with Mark Andrews against Baltimore. I was more scared of Baltimore, but if anybody's been a doubter of Buffalo before then, they're no longer a doubters now. And Josh Allen is legitimately the best player, not just best quarterback, but the best player in the league. And I don't think there's any doubt behind that anymore.
You know what? You talking that talk, I might just sit back and let you host the doggone show.
Buddy,
listen,
like,
Josh
you
is
want to
killing,
football.
Bro.
I'm not just a hockey guy, man. Listen, I just as much I have a wall dedicated to the NHL, the Sabres. I have just as much memorabilia. Like, I remember exactly where I was when the Bills finally beat the Patriots. I still feel those emotions. I still have that cover of Sports Illustrated framed in my dining room still to this day. Not still to this day, but man, trust me, buddy, I could go on and on and on about the Buffalo Bills. And speaking of which, I'm going to be in the Meadowlands for when they play the Jets in a couple weeks.
Nice. I'm debating. I feel like I'm leaning more towards no, but I'm debating going to that game. But
yeah,
let's real quick, because I do, before we talk about your event, that's that's something that is going to be happening. That's going to be very, very dope. It's going to be fun. I don't do the hockeys. I don't know much about the hockeys. So I want to talk real quick. Are the Sabres going to be worth it? Because I'm coming back to Buffalo, and me and a couple guys, a couple friends I got, we're supposed to be going to this game. Is it going to be worth it for me to go to that game that weekend?
Which game are you going to?
I don't even know who they play. I'm the wrong one to ask. It's the 29th, I believe.
They play the Leafs on the 31st, so I was going to suggest a game to go to, a fun game. That'd be a fun one to go to. I'll tell you this right now. It doesn't matter who they're playing, honest to God. I'm not going to sit here and tell people that they're a playoff team, because I don't believe they're a playoff team. But the best analogy I can give you about the Buffalo Sabres this season, and I think you'll appreciate this, is for 17 years, we would see that graphic for the Bills of the playoff layout, and the Bills would always be in the hunt. That's where the Sabres are this season. They are going to be in the hunt. They're going to be on the outside looking in, but they are going to be contending, and they're going to be making games interesting come the end of the season, come spring. Games are going to be interesting for this hockey team. I can promise you that, under Don Granato, and he's been the biggest key. Don Granato has been like the missing link that this team hasn't had for almost a decade. Just consistency behind the bench and up in the press box with Kevin Adams. I was a big skeptic when they hired Kevin Adams. I thought he was just going to be a yes man, just kind of doing what Terry and Kim tell him to do. And there's just been so much turnover at coach and GM. I think when Jack Eichel was traded, I think he was on his 5th head coach in like 6 years, which is insane. Like, you can't expect to have success with that type of turnover. We know as Bills fans, you can't have that type of success with so much turnover at head coach. You just can't. Like, it's impossible, in my opinion. So now that we have those two positions figured out, we have a good leadership core with Alex Tuck. Dylan Cousins is a young leader on this team. Kyle Okposo. Rasmus Dahlin is emerging as a leader as well.
I know Dahlin. I know leadership
group intact, and that's the second key. So
I know Dahlin. That's the only name. Well, you said Dahlin. Dahlin. That's the only name I know. So I mean, I appreciate you.
We'll get to know Alex Tuck, because he's a big Bills fan. Alex Tuck is a huge Bills fan. He's from Buffalo, from the area, and he's been at almost every single home Bills game he's been able to go to, starting the shouts on. And that's not some PR stunt where you'll see Josh yelling at the games, and some people are pumped about it. It's like, oh, look, Allen's up there wearing an Alex Tuck jersey. He's either there because he's a fan, or maybe he's doing it just for the whole One Buffalo theme. But Alex Tuck is true to the bone a Buffalo guy. And he comes to Bills games because he's a Bills fan. So, know that name as well. If I were to suggest getting a jersey, if you're not going to get a Dahlin jersey, go get an Alex Tuck jersey.
All right. Well, look, let's talk about your event. You have something fun coming up for Buffalo people to do. It's a 3-on-3 charity tournament at Buffalo Riverworks, and you're going to be doing this December 9th through the 11th. Let's talk real quick about it, and then, I'll get it's a bye week, so I can't even get a good prediction from you for this week, but it's all good. Let's talk about this real quick and see what's going on.
Yeah. So this all started actually, back in the summer. I saw a parking lot that had just been paved. And I remember back when I was a kid, like 12, 13, 14, 15 years old, I said on Twitter, it's like, it would take me and my friends barely 24 hours to get a game going on that fresh pavement, playing street hockey. You know what I mean? Like, just like the good old days before video games and streaming and social media, when kids were just so much more like inclined just to be outside and having fun. Not to say that doesn't happen today, but it's less likely. Like back then, you would go down side streets. You couldn't look down a side street without seeing a street hockey game going. It's a fact. And those are few and far in between nowadays. So it started as that, and it gained some momentum. And then, May 14th happened. And I remember seeing your post about Pearl. And it really, I'm a big philanthropist, man. Like, I love giving back. Anybody who knows me personally, I would rather much make an impact giving back rather than taking. Like, I'm a very minimalist. I don't need a lot in life. I get more of a thrill out of making somebody's life better. I'm with big brothers, big sisters. My first little just moved to Wisconsin, to a school, and I get a big thrill out of that, and it makes me feel, worthwhile, I guess. But when I saw your post about Pearl after May 14th, it really hit me to my core, and just how much you loved her. And I can just tell through your words how an amazing of a person she was, just reading everybody else's stories. And I'm like, you know what? We've really built something here with that previous post. We have like a lot of people that want to do this. Let's try and see if we can take that momentum and turn it into something worthwhile. And that's how the Buffalo Strong initiative, I guess you could say, like Avengers Initiative, the Buffalo Strong Initiative came to be born. And I remember reaching out to you, and you were, I wanted to make sure that you were a part of this, and I would still like for you to be a part of this at some point, come the weekend of the tournament, if possible. And it was, for me, it started off with so much momentum, and then it kind of simmered down a little bit because of some issues with getting some authorizations for the areas we were going to use. So because of that, we had to push it back to December and turn it into an ice hockey tournament. So December 9th through the 11th, we will be hosting. It's called the Buffalo Strong Ice Hockey Tournament. And all of the proceeds, of course, after cost to pay for the ice time and everything, is going directly to the families affected from the tragedy on May 14th. And I'm really putting all my heart and my effort into this. There's Mike Carr as well, Joshua Dunne. They're with KIA, the Buffalo Spartan Warriors. They're in the Buffalo Sabres Warriors programs, which are veterans teams. KIA is they do a memorial march for veterans. They have our back, and they're helping support us. And Pure Hockey is also a part of this. The Labatt Brewhouse Draft Room is a sponsor as well. And, we're all very passionate about making this work. And anybody, even if you don't play hockey and you feel compelled, because I know the Bills Mafia family, not just obviously I'm a Sabres guy, but, we're all family, one Buffalo, right? So I hope that when people see this and they take that same passion you've seen in the past with other initiatives that Bills Mafia, our family, has raised awareness about, and take that same passion and bring it here. And we want to give these families, a good Christmas, before the holidays. And so trying to relieve that financial burden that the holidays bring. And I know there's nothing really that can really, take away the pain that you and everyone else have felt. But if we can just try and relieve that financial burden that the holidays bring sometimes, that's kind of our main goal. And, that's our goal. We're just going to, and if you want to donate, it's KIAmemorialmarch.com. And KIA stands for Killed in Action. You go to their website, you can scan that QR code right there. And you go to it's on the homepage. You see a tab that says there's no tab that specifies our tournament. You just go to the Make a Donation tab. You click there, and under the comments, you type in Buffalo Strong Hockey Tournament donation. You can donate as much as you want. And we're going to be making some contests here going forward. I have some pretty cool stuff to give away for anybody who wants to donate. We'll choose some winners, some Bills stuff, some Sabres stuff. Okay. So I'm really hoping that, this word gets around and we can really make this a success, because we have to obviously cover costs before we can even make the donations happen. Oh, sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. It's just so I just wanted to say I posted it on Twitter just now. So everybody in the comments, everybody listening, if you aren't familiar, go to my Twitter page. You can absolutely find it. Dwayne, I want to thank you, man. We gotta kind of tie it up though. I have my man.
I apologize. I can talk.
No, you're good. I know you're a podcaster like me, so we can get in and get going. So I want to get you back on when I have the maybe next week with the bye being this week. Maybe I can get you on and we can kind of just talk more about it and talk just more. But I want to thank you from my heart, from my family's perspective, from the people I know who are also affected by this. It's one of those things where this year there's been some good talk and some good attention to the east side of Buffalo and to different initiatives, but it's still not moving how we want things to move. So I just want to appreciate you for doing your part. And like I said, we'll link and talk some more. Ladies and gentlemen, the co-host of Two Goalies, One Mic, Mr. Dwayne, thank you, bro. Thank you.
No problem. And like I said, we love to come on with you again. Maybe even have you on Two Goalies, One Mic sometime. Me and Greg Thompson talked about doing a crossover episode. Let's make it a big panel. Let's go.
Yeah, make me look funny though, because I don't know the hockeys, but we're gonna do it.
Oh, dude, don't trust me. I'll teach you about the hockeys. I promise you.
All right. Appreciate you, brother. You have a good night.
Appreciate you too, man. Thank you.
Yes, sir. All right, ladies and gentlemen, my guest of the evening. I'm excited about this, just like I was excited about Dwayne. But this guy right here, he is about to be a bestseller. Basically, already is. He's a great writer. He's a great author. The book is out now. The Blood and Guts: How Tight Ends Saved Football. I'm gonna just tell you, this man needs no introduction. He is. Ty, what's going on, man?
Jay Spence, the king. I feel I can have a beer on this podcast, right? I cracked one open. I figured it was okay. Man, it is good to finally be with you. We've kind of like lived in the Twitterverse, tweeting here, DMing there. We've talked about doing this, and man, it's good to finally be with you in the virtual world.
You know what? The fact that I'm able to do it on the day that your book releases, to me, this is great because we, like you said, we have talked about it so much and about several different things, but when it comes to this, let's get to that, man. Like I went and I don't have the book yet. I did order it, so I wanted the hard copy. I'm not one of the electronic guys. I need to fill the paper, but I've read up some of the notes and I read some of the things that people have said about the book, and I'm very excited to hear about it. Let's get into it. So obviously it's How Tight Ends Save Football. Just tell us about it a little bit.
No doubt. You know, I think a lot of people are wondering, like, why in the hell are you writing about tight ends? What about this position is newsworthy, is new, is fresh, is different? And I think the impetus for diving into this project head first was just being kind of an old soul. You know, when it comes to football, I think we all remember that moment of being introduced to the game. Maybe it was a Pop Warner practice, maybe JV varsity, where you're getting hit. You're doing the hit, and then you realize, is this for me or is this not for me? It's a violent game. There's an element of risk that comes with playing football that you just don't get. Meeting up with some buddies at the park playing basketball or some pickup baseball or what have you. Football's just different, man. And I feel like watching the game today, with all the flags and all the fines, and it's like the NFL is in this constant search to find a middle ground that doesn't exist when it comes to what's allowed, what's not allowed when it comes to physicality. Mm-hmm. It drives me insane. Maybe I'm getting old. Maybe I'm getting old and bald and, I'm just curmudgeon-y and I'm throwing the remote around. But I feel like football has changed these last few years. And the more I kind of thought about it, like, all right, well, where can it be saved? Where is it being preserved? And to me, it's the tight end because you have to do a little bit of everything. You have to block, a 300-pound D end. You have to go run a route and make that catch on 3rd and 8 with everything on the line. And so I just started talking to tight ends, traveling around the country, threw some drinks back with Jeremy Shockey, went down to Mike Ditka's golf course, hung out with Tony Gonzalez down in Austin, Texas, talked to Gronk and Kittle and all these guys. And honestly, like the more that I hung out with these players and from different eras, the more this book became something different, something bigger than football. I think Tony Gonzalez put it best. Like, the tight end position tells us everything we need to know about life. It makes you a better human to play the position, and I think to learn about it, as we kind of find out from Mike Ditka all the way through to George Kittle, chapter 1 through 50. Each chapter is basically a long form story. So it's what I do, what I try to do at Go Long, what I did at Bleacher Report, the Buffalo News, Milwaukee Journal, said, like, sit down with a guy, get in his world, get to see what makes him tick, and just go from there. And they all do kind of intertwine. And
you do that well. And like you're able to bring stories to life, which is why I think most people in Buffalo who's familiar with your work, that's why we're familiar with it, because it, you do a great job at like getting us to be able to see through the eyes of the person you're writing about. So with that being said, I don't want you to obviously give us the book because I want people to go buy it. But if you can share like one of your favorite stories that maybe didn't make the book, or one of your favorite stories in a condensed version that's in the book that we can look forward to reading.
And I love telling people what's in the book. That's totally cool with me. We want them to, hit purchase there on Amazon because it's about 350 pages. So there's a lot packed in here. Obviously in terms of the Bills, it's a little tough because there haven't been a lot of legendary tight ends that have come through Western New York. Sadly, maybe Dawson Knox changes that. And with his game, he really could. He could go down as the best tight end that the team's had. And actually had a Q&A with him up at the site. He's phenomenal, dude. I mean, just an incredible rise himself. But when it comes to the Bills, I'm thinking of a connection here. Mike Mularkey's a name that people are familiar with, right? For better or worse here in Buffalo.
Yeah.
So Mike Mularkey, in the book kind of does represent the old guard. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, he's an old school tight end that, grew up in the trenches, that really believes a tight end is that tight to the line, like getting your hands dirty. He taught his players as a coach, one final shove at the whistle, just give him one extra little shove. And there is something to that. That's important in football. I really believe that. Like, there's a lot of good that comes to the way Mike Mularkey played, the way he coached. That's why we have a chapter on Mark Bruner, an old school 90s tight end with the Pittsburgh Steelers, who is not exactly going to be, doing many crazy things in the pass game. But Mike Mularkey also coached into the 2000s, in the 2010s, and the game evolved. The position evolved. He didn't necessarily want to evolve with the position, and it led to we saw it here in Buffalo, right? Man, speaking of the Steelers, I was at that game, and was it 2005 when they beat the Bills with the backups? Oh, brutal.
You didn't have to bring that one up, man. You just didn't have to do that.
Yeah, that was. What's interesting though? I think they kept their offensive line in that game, so Willie Parker had some room to run. But I'd probably define this as like the climax of the book. Like, Tony Gonzalez is doing his thing with the Kansas City Chiefs. Basketballifying the position. He's just acrobatics down the field. Plucking footballs atop heads, just at these impossible angles. He's unstoppable. I mean, really, there's no other way to put it. He's shattering records, and he's just not winning. So eventually he wants out of Kansas City, gets traded to Atlanta. Tony Gonzalez is pretty jacked. Like, I'm going to Atlanta, a young quarterback in Matt Ryan. Michael Turner's my running back. Roddy White at wide receiver. And, oh, by the way, my coordinator was a tight end, Mike Mularkey. Like, he's thinking it's a perfect storm. And he still has a lot of game left. He did a phenomenal job of avoiding injuries, unlike Shockey and Gronk and these guys just bashing everything in sight. And the first day, and I'm sorry if I'm rambling on and on here. Jay,
no, this is.
I promise.
For an interview. This is perfect.
So, day one with Mike Mularkey, Tony Gonzalez he sits down to watch film with him, and Mularkey it's kind of gruff in his tone, just per Tony Gonzalez, and Mike Mularkey kind of confirms this scene too. He's kind of serious, kind of strict, pulls up the film, and it's Mark Bruner. All these Steelers of old just kind of shortening necks, as Tony Gonzalez put. There's in the run game, just it's one blocking play after another, and he kind of lets clip after clip after clip play and tells Tony Gonzalez in so many words, this is what a tight end is. This is who you need to be for me. Tony Gonzalez didn't really speak up at the time. He's just thinking, why in the hell did Atlanta just trade for me? And honestly, Mike Mularkey's thinking, why the hell did we trade for Tony Gonzalez? That's not the tight end he wanted in his offense. It was an arranged marriage that was doomed from the start. So they went at it. We have all the detail from, after a practice when Mularkey's trying to show Tony Gonzalez how to block and trying to toughen him and all the tight ends up. And he's got like a backup D lineman, and they're doing like one-on-one hitting drills, just matching each other, which you don't really see in the modern NFL. A little strange. And Tony eventually says, F this, I'm out of here. Yeah. And they stopped having him block power plays in the run game. It was a bad fit. It was a bad marriage, and it blew up in pretty epic proportions when Tony Gonzalez was on catch number 999 for his career, one away from 1,000 in Tampa Bay, the last game of the season. Atlanta's not going to make the playoffs. They're 8-7. Tampa's not going to make the playoffs, and Tony is dead set certain to this day that Mike Mularkey was doing everything in his power to ice him out, and just wasn't calling plays for him. So Tony Gonzalez is getting pissed off in the second half. They get to the last drive. They're trying to ice out a win and just set up a field goal to win by 10. And they did call one play for Tony Gonzalez, but Matt Ryan was under pressure. Couldn't get the throw off. Matt Ryan's a young quarterback. He's not going to audible to a dump off like he probably should have just to get him 1,000. So anyways, game ends. They win the game. They go in the locker room. Mike Mularkey's going around the room, shaking everybody's hand, congratulating them. Tony Gonzalez he's absolutely fuming. He wants a piece of Mike Mularkey. He comes up to Tony Gonzalez to shake his hand, and a fight almost breaks out, according to Gonzalez. Now, Malarkey refutes that. He says that it wasn't close to an all-out brawl, but in so many words said he was ready to brawl himself if Tony wanted to take it to that level. So we'll just kind of cut it off right there. Buy the book. You'll get the full story of what happened next. But I talked to both sides. I got Tony Gonzalez, Mike Malarkey, and it was kind of like the tight end was put on trial that day. Like, what is the tight end going to become? Is it going to evolve into this weapon that's going to change the sport? Or is it going to be, in tight, shortening necks, kind of being a grit and grimer? It was a book. It's a book full of stories like this, and I just can't thank everybody enough, especially here in the hometown, Western New York, for purchasing and learning more about the game.
See, now I really can't wait to read it, because that story, obviously Buffalo fans have a feeling about Mike Malarkey. We already do. But I mean, one of the, if not the greatest, depending on who you talk to, the greatest tight end of all time, and you're stopping him from getting the big, that's wild to me, man. Like, and the way the game has evolved today, I kind of wanted to, I don't know if this is part of your book or not, but I wanted your opinion on, now I feel like you have some guys who block still very well, but it seems like now teams are looking for guys who are almost like great wide receiver threats, like the Darren Wallers of the world. To me, he does some things very well as a tight end, but he looks like a receiver. Then you look at down in Atlanta, they drafted probably, I mean, you could line them up anywhere, but again, like the position is evolving again. So based on your studies and the conversations you've had, what do you think is the biggest change in what we see now with tight ends versus some of the stories that you're talking about in your book?
Yes, I mean, in 08, 09, 2010, there was still some reluctance from a Mike Malarkey, and he's not alone, in coaches to evolve, to kind of wrap your arms around this tight end who, he has a basketball pass, but that's good. He's going to, leap over your safety, leap over your linebacker. He's going to do something crazy down the field. I think in terms of just coaches in the NFL putting their ego aside and realizing this is something you should covet, this is something you should want, from Tony Gonzalez to Antonio Gates getting a shot. I mean, he doesn't even play college football, and he's a basketball player at Kent State. We have the backstory on how he got his shot with San Diego, to Jimmy Graham, whose story is just unbelievable. I can't wait for people to see where he comes from. Growing up basically as an orphan, his mom didn't even want him. Way tougher than anybody realizes. And to throw another ex-Bills coach out there, Greg Williams is a riot. We talked at length for this, but him and Jimmy would go at it in practice, and just a lot of F you this, F you that. When they went offense versus defense, 1-versus-1. I mean, Jimmy would just take the football and chuck it at Greg Williams' head. So,
Williams, yeah. You mentioned two coaches there that Bills fans just aren't too fond of, but yeah, he was a tough guy to. I'm sure you could tell he was tough to communicate with as a player. And that sucks.
But you know what? It was all in kind of good fun. I mean, Greg loved it. Like, he wanted that energy and that passion, and he wanted his players fighting. And that's what Jimmy Graham had, but he was a basketball player. I think more teams just kind of realize, look, you can be a tough SOB and have that basketball pass and be athletic down the field. And so that's absolutely where it's going. You're right. Kyle Pitts is the one that's going to take this position into a totally new realm because of the matchup nightmare he poses. Mm-hmm. And look, I think you can still learn to block. I mean, you can still develop that part of your game. I was just talking to the Falcons tight ends coach Saturday, and he said, look, Kyle's about 250. He's bigger than people think, and he's a willing blocker. So if you're willing, if you want to do it, you can get better at it. And I think that will be the case for him. In terms of finding just somebody who does it all out of college, that's going to be almost impossible. I don't know if there's another George Kittle that's going to come along, because colleges don't ask tight ends to do that and be prolific in the passing game. It is kind of a unicorn at this point. That's why Kittle gets his just due in this book, because very rarely is there a player who is going to absolutely just kick your ass and, plant your face in the dirt 10 yards downfield and go lose for a 70-yard touchdown. So if that player exists, look out. But I think it is going this athletic direction that you reference.
Well, you know what, and that's not to keep going back to Buffalo, but I think that's why we're just now really starting to see Dawson Knox be this very, he's developed now into a weapon in several ways, because they just didn't use him that way, at Ole Miss. They just didn't use him as a receiver. I think 1 year he only had like 3 receptions or something weird. But now you see he's one of those targets that Josh loves to go to. So I agree with you. I don't think we're going to get somebody right out of college that's going to be, well, I don't want to say we won't, because these guys every year, it seems like guys coming out of college for any position now are doing things that I just wouldn't imagine rookies doing. So it's insane to think about.
You made a really good point there too. I mean, the relationship with Josh Allen is so important. I mean, that is such a theme that came up again and again with the best of the best at tight end, where, Dallas Clark is like best friends with Peyton Manning. They're pulling these hilarious pranks on teammates off the field. Like during training camp, they used to set a big garbage bin up, fill it up halfway with water, set it up against the guy's door, knock on the door, and hope he opens it and it just, spills all over their stuff. So they're having fun in that regard. But then on the field, in the dog days of summer, they're perfecting like one route 25 times. They're not going up the route tree, working on a little bit of everything. They want to just drill down. All right, here's exactly how I want this seam route to be run. And to the centimeter, to the inch, exactly how it needs to be. So when you get in that playoff moment, like we saw with Manning and Clark time and time again, it's poetry in motion. And I think that was the case with Fouts and Kellen Winslow. Granted, they went at it. They were at each other's throats, when they played together. Right down the list, Rob Gronkowski and Tom Brady. We all think Rob is this Neanderthal, right, with a club in one hand and not many brain cells at work. The dude is smart. I mean, he's book smart, but he's unbelievably football smart to get on Tom Brady's level. So they put in that work. Josh Allen and Dawson Knox may have something working where I think that, that's kind of a lofty goal to get to a Brady Gronk level. But I think over time, we're going to see Dawson Knox just continue to improve, because a tight end just always happens to be a quarterback's best friend.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you mentioned Gronk. I agree. I think I know it's fun to make fun of him, and it's fun because he goes out and parties and all that stuff. But no, Gronk, man, on top of him being a phenomenal physical talent, the guy was on the same page with Tom Brady, like you mentioned. He was phenomenal, but he was scary, and I think that's maybe the reason why so many of us like to make fun of him, because we were scared of him when he was in the league. But let me ask you this one last thing about the book. So in doing this, I know obviously Mike Ditka and like we talked about Tony Gonzalez and Rob Gronkowski, and I mentioned Shannon Sharp on Twitter when we talked the other day, and there's a list, Vernon Davis and all these different guys, Ozzie News. You could go down a list. In your opinion now, and I don't know if you share this in the book, but who would you say would be the king of kings when it comes to the tight end position?
Boy, every era is so different. Because the game just constantly changes, right? The players trying to tackle Mike Ditka, and granted, Ditka and John Mackey were freak shows. I mean, to catch a ball and just like ram through 6, 7, 8 guys, especially in a world where there were no laws and rules, and you could just maim a tight end. I mean, Ray Nitschke is clotheslining Mike Ditka across the middle of the field. Ditka tells a story like they're outside of a restaurant in Milwaukee, and a brawl almost breaks out. It's different times. So I'm not saying like I don't want to poo-poo that era at all, because the older I get, the more respect I have for football in the 60s. But on these highlights, you look, I mean, some of these guys trying to tackle Ditka, I mean, they look like me. They look like gotcha. bunch of white guys that might be selling you milk during the week, or shoemakers on the side. It's not exactly a linebacker of today, who can run a 4.3 and bench press 30, 35 reps. That specimen did not exist in the 60s. So that's why I come back to Rob Gronkowski. I mean, he played with a level of just beautiful belligerence, where anything in his path was going to be obliterated. And it was in the run game. It happened in the pass game. He had a hell of a lot of fun doing it. I think when I say the tight end save football, it's not just X's and O's and the violence that we love. It's having fun in a game. It's authenticity. It's, Rob Gronkowski just having the time of his life at a party with his brothers, and, dropping him on his head after he broke his arm. He just did whatever he wanted to. When he played for Bill Belichick and the Patriots, when, we're all accustomed to thinking they're a bunch of robots that just follow like that do your job mantra. And, they can't think for themselves. They can't act for themselves. They're basically handed a sheet of paper and told what to say and how to say it. That's the stuff I hate when it comes to pro football. I mean, my God, let's not act like these are trade secrets from Russia. It's a damn game. Have some fun. It's entertainment.
Yeah.
Gronk understood that. And to do what he did with the Patriots, I think was so important because, when the Patriots win and these assistant coaches think, oh, I got to be like Belichick and just kind of be an asshole publicly, privately. It's my way or the highway. They go. What happens? They go to other teams. They lose. They get fired. Like, that's not why you won. You won because the guy's a defensive genius, and there's accountability. There's discipline. There's all these great qualities that Belichick has. But I mean, Rob Gronkowski is proof you can be yourself and win. So that spawns Travis Kelce. That spawns George Kittle. That spawns all the tight ends of today who they're dominating and also they're having fun. And by God, I think that's so important for the NFL.
It is. And you know what? You talk about Gronk and even just that whole thing in New England, because even when Tom Brady went down to Tampa Bay and Gronk came out of retirement and followed him down there, same thing. Now you got to see personality from Tom. I felt like it was weird. It was like, I think I like Tom Brady, because his personality was completely different than what we've assumed that it was over the last 2 decades, and no, I agree with you, man. Tight ends have absolutely, especially Gronk, when you mention him, we didn't like him in Buffalo for those years, but I tell you what, I enjoyed watching him. Outside of him playing the Bills, I enjoyed watching him. He was unstoppable, just unstoppable.
Yeah, right. When he's not concussing Tre'Davious White, which there is a point in this Gronk chapter. I talked to his high school coach, and he would have to pull Rob from games. Like, he could see when his temper was going to reach that point of holy crap, he's going to hurt somebody. I got to protect Rob against himself. And then Bill Belichick would actually do that too. He just didn't do it in that Bills game, right? Obviously, that's about as dirty as it gets when he did the Trey White. Awful. And I think that is also a theme with these tight ends where it's like they all have this element of crazy to them, however you want to define it. And for the most part, they can kind of go up to that line without crossing it. But every so often, Rob Gronkowski crosses the line. Shannon Sharp crosses the line.
Absolutely,
they all do. Which is, I guess, if you're the Patriots, if you're a team that employs, you just have to kind of take that and try to work with it and harness it best you can.
See, now my personal, but even before he became like this great TV personality, I've always loved Shannon Sharp because you could see his personality. Same way with Gronk, you could see it on the field. You could see it, when they do the mic'd up or when they did that first season of Hard Knocks or second season, I believe. But when they did the Hard Knocks and he was on there just cracking jokes, that was the energy that made me fall in love with him, man. And then obviously the play on the field. But yeah, no, I can't wait to read the book. Ladies and gentlemen, please please go buy it. It is gonna be a book that you don't want to miss. The Bloods and Guts, How Tight Ends Saved Football. If you've read any of Ty's writing, then is this going to be worth the purchase. So go out and get it. It's on Amazon. It's everywhere books are available. Man, I can't wait to read it.
Hey, thanks so much, man. I really appreciate the kind words. And I think folks are going to love it. I'm genuinely excited for people just to kind of hear the stories that I've been hearing from these guys over the past year.
All right, well, let's move on. I don't want to end up too quick. So let's move on to something a little more recent, or the book is recent as today, but I mean, I want to talk a little bit about, so you actually have the pleasure for Bills fans as well. You host the Isaiah McKenzie, or co-host the Isaiah McKenzie podcast with Isaiah. And I think that's awesome. The first reason I think it's awesome is because I think that we're lucky these days. Like, I'm not saying that Isaiah McKenzie is Michael Jordan, or I'm not saying he's Brett Favre for football, but could you imagine back in like the 90s, like after the flu game, Jordan, the next day he does a podcast with Ty, it's just like you get a firsthand view of like, what his experience is. And now across the nation, we have a bunch of different guys. Jordan Poyer just announced that he's doing one. You have in the NBA, you got guys, and now in Buffalo, again, we have Isaiah McKenzie show. And I think that it's one of those things where, as a fan base, we're able to get smarter every week and enjoy the guys on a different level. What's your experience like doing the show with him? How did this come into fruition? Like, just tell me about it, man. I just think it's awesome.
Dude, thanks so much for the kind words, because that's what we were shooting for with this Isaiah McKenzie show. It's, I guess the idea for it kind of started back. I did a profile on Isaiah ahead of the AFC Championship game against the Chiefs and really got to know him and his background and where he comes from. I mean, he's so damn fun, on social media and the stories he tells on the show. Like, we tend to forget where he comes from in South Florida, where, I mean, he's seen dead bodies on his doorstep. He told the story of a bullet grazing him. He felt the bullet graze. I mean, he lived that thin line between life and death. I think it just gives him a perspective to not take a sport, a game too seriously, to be as fun-loving as he is, to be such a great teammate, such a great friend to everybody in his orbit. So we kind of it was just great talking to him. It was just fun. And then that kind of grew into having him on a happy hour with our subscribers that go long. And I mean, he's telling that prank that he's telling the story of the prank he pulled on his grandmother, which, oh my God, I still can't believe he did that. And when he played dead, like he's pretending to be dead and waits until like the cops show up and everybody's at the house before he actually steps up and says, "I'm alive," as a little kid. I mean, that's diabolical stuff, Isaiah. Like, it's so.
And he's been a jokester his entire life, is what you're telling me. That's a crazy joke to play.
Oh, I think he might have been 9 years old when he did that. So, got into before last season. And, I just feel like the fans who are pouring their hard-earned money into this game, right, to show up at airports and show up at stadiums, and, they deserve more than cliches at a podium. Whether it's in Buffalo or elsewhere. This is the NFL in general. The NFL in general really wants centralized messaging. Here are the talking points. Here's what you got to hit on. Don't get out of line. I mean, Isaiah tells a funny story where, Sean McDermott with the whole team played clips of everybody kind of like saying the same thing one after another. And Isaiah said he's sitting there like, this is a cult. I'm a part of a cult here. I can't do this. So he's a free thinker, which is just so appreciated in a game where there aren't many of them. I just thought it'd be fun. Like, let's just talk for an hour, 8 times a year about the game, about life, incorporate the fans. We opened it up for questions for about 20, 30 minutes every episode. And it's just a hell of a lot of fun. I just think that the fans deserve to know how this game really works, what it's really like to be a player in the NFL, through the ups, through the downs. Mm-hmm. And look, Isaiah's honest. He doesn't hold back. And if he fumbles in a game, if something goes wrong like that Miami game, I ask him and he's honest about it. He doesn't. We talked about 13 seconds at length right after that game last season. So I think that in the end, the fans benefit for getting that perspective, and that's just the whole goal of it all.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. He's super honest and transparent about everything. He doesn't hold back, and on top of that, his personality is second to none. Like he's one of the funniest dudes, and I just love the whole team that Brandon Beane has built. Like the guys that are here, I feel like it's just a team of great guys. There's been years in the past where it's like, like this guy doesn't quite quote unquote fit what we think is the culture here. I don't see any guy on the roster like that at all. And Isaiah McKenzie, shout out to him. Quick question for you about him. Since you next time you have a show with him, can we ask him about, because I'm curious. What does he see him? Obviously a wide receiver, but I feel like the way the team uses him. So special teams, obviously they've used him in special teams. He's had some rough times in punt return at times. And then now they're using him in a kick return capacity. But I feel like there's a lot of times where it feels like he's going to get more involved. Last year, they used him in the Patriots game, and he was like, like, I'm here. And then kind of wasn't in there again, and it just seems like it's an up and down with usage with him. I want to know, like, I don't know. I feel like he should be more dangerous with this offense, but it just seems like they don't use him in that capacity. And I don't know if it's like depth. I don't know if it's that he's just not on it. I'm not gonna put somebody in the comments is like, ask him to stop dropping passes. I'm sure he will address that, because he's very honest. He addressed the Miami game at length, and I thought it was great when he talked about, I was trying to get out of bounds. What do people think I was doing? But yeah, I just want to know from his perspective, because I don't understand. I think he's a dangerous weapon, man. I've seen him in this or in Brian Daboll's offense in ways that, like, this guy could do it for us. Do you have a opinion or a perspective on that? Even obviously he's not here.
Right. I mean, I'm with you. After that New England game, or I guess leading up to that New England game, it always just kind of seemed like he was a Christmas ornament, right? He's just kind of jet sweeping around and kind of a decoy, and trying to get a linebacker to take a step that way to send somebody else the other way. And he had all this speed bottled up. It just wasn't really used much at all. And I mean, granted, they were winning most of the season. Then boom, what happens? Indy, he has the turnover. He's kind of painted the scapegoat out of that game. I mean, they couldn't tackle Jonathan Taylor, and Isaiah's the one who was like benched, and he was pretty honest about it on one of our shows. I mean, that definitely hurts him, mentally for a few days to kind of get over that. And he got back on the field thanks to COVID, right? I mean, if those receivers don't get COVID, he's not playing in Foxborough. Lights it up. Josh Allen goes to him again and again and again. And, I guess to answer your question, I think in theory, he really is the slot receiver that's replacing Cole Beasley. I mean, in training camp, he was incredible, right? I mean, he was the star of training camp. Now that the games have begun, it's been a roller coaster, if we're being honest, right? There's been a lot of good. He has scored touchdowns, in the red zone. Like, I mean, Josh Allen missed him in Miami, right? He kind of dirted that throw. So maybe he's the hero of that game instead of the GOAT if the ball just gets to him. At the same time, the inconsistency is real. I mean, he'd sit here and be as honest as anybody about it, that was a bad day for Isaiah McKenzie. But he's had bad days before, and he's bounced back from those bad days. And, as somebody who's been as critical of Sean McDermott as I've been, I give him a lot of credit for not pulling him. I really thought the head coach was just going to get him out of there after those 3 mistakes. He didn't. I mean, he still played, and he still believes in him. I don't think that Isaiah McKenzie is just going to, fade off into the sunset post-bye. I mean, Khalil Shakir looks like a good player who has a role in this offense, but This is a pyrotechnic offense that needs 4 or 5 weapons unleashed in all directions. And I do think that Isaiah has a role. Like, is he going to be Cole Beasley getting 100 targets? No, because Stephon Diggs might be the best receiver in football. Gabe Davis is a rising star. Dawson Knox just caught a game-winning touchdown. But all these guys, I mean, there's going to be plays when one of them's covered and Isaiah leaks free, and he just can't trip over himself in the end zone like he did in Kansas City. He's proven he can bounce back from these mistakes. He's done it in the past, and I would think he does.
I hope so. And so with all transparency, I've been critical of him in the past, like with the special team stuff. And I was a big fan of him in the offense, like I mentioned earlier. And I'm like, look, you put him in the offense, I think this guy's going to be incredible. I don't want him returning punts. So I was very clear with that. But I think the reason for me is when you look at guys like Isaiah, it's like you just see all the potential. All like in the world, and then when it just doesn't happen, I think the disappointment really it sets in differently, because you really want to believe that this guy is like exactly who the potential says he can be. And man, it just I love Isaiah. So moving on from that, I do want to get your opinion on the game. At the top of the show, normally I do a monologue, but then I had Dwayne jump on, so I didn't really get a chance to do it. What a hell of a game! Like, what a game!
I this might sound like blasphemy, but I liked, just from a objective consumer of the sport, I liked Sunday's game a hell of a lot more than that divisional playoff game, right? Because nothing came easy. I mean, both teams, both quarterbacks were trying to figure stuff out, and it was a grind for the first 3 quarters, really. And both teams kind of playing chess, taking away each other's best players, and there were some turnovers, but there weren't like blatant errors. There weren't just blown coverages and just guys running free for sacks. I just feel like it was a quality football game, a good 24-20 game between the 2 best quarterbacks in football, the 2 best teams in football, and defenses that are a hell of a lot better than they looked in the playoffs last year. And absolutely. I mean, I guess the takeaway here is Von Miller. He was worth every penny in this game to just end 3 drives to win the game. He was the Mahomes stopper he was paid to be in this regular season game. I mean, they paid him that money to do it in the playoffs. This still doesn't really feel like a revenge. They didn't avenge 13 seconds. That comes in January, but it was a sweet win for the team. And Brandon Beane is coming out of this looking like a genius, because Von Miller at his age, 33 going on 34, as a pass rusher that relies on agility and athleticism and speed, it's a huge gamble. And he's gambling on Von Miller, keeping his body in like peak physical form and knowing when to take his chances as a rusher and when to affect a game. He's been doing that all season.
And you know what? I think also on top of that, just having them in the building, because Greg Rousseau, I mean, obviously players develop and they take a few years, but I don't know if he develops this same way this quickly. Like in a year, you can just see such a huge difference from this time now in this season versus last year. Like Greg Rousseau, you could see the physical attribute. He's long and man, he's playing lights out, man. He's playing lights out, and it's just fun to watch. But on offense, or really not offense, I want to talk to quarterbacks for a moment, man. Like, have you ever, they want to compare it to Brady and Manning, and they want to compare it to other great quarterback matchups. I just don't know if I've ever, now I'm biased because it's Josh, but it's like, I just don't know if I've ever seen two quarterbacks that have the ability to do the things that both these guys can do on this type of, I don't know if I've ever seen it, man. Like, yeah. Josh, have you, like, to your recollection, have you ever, what can you compare this to? Because I don't think you really can compare it to the Brady Manning.
Right. I mean, it's the best of our generation, of this era. I think I started this pod saying like I'm an old man trapped in a middle-aged body. I still kind of like that. I mean, the 90s is my wheelhouse, man. That's when the NFL was at its peak. So like, give me Favre, Steve Young, Marino, Kelly. Like, I just felt like that was the golden age. It's hard for me to say like, this is the best quarterback play I've ever seen, when the quarterbacks of the 90s, I mean, they're getting dinged constantly, hit constantly. You can't touch quarterbacks today. So if you're Josh Allen, you're Patrick Mahomes, and you can dance around back there and make some magic, I mean, mentally that's going to lead to what we saw in the playoffs last year. But it's the best. What comes to mind when I hear Allen Mahomes, and we wrote about it at Go Long when I launched the website. It's just wild that Terry Pagula, the owner, he knew what Patrick Mahomes was going to be before anybody. That fall, way before Kuiper, McShay were even thinking about this guy as a first-round pick, let alone a future Pro Bowler, Hall of Famer. The owner of the Buffalo Bills just saw something special in Patrick Mahomes. Like, I mean, that just says a lot about his football intellect, at least in this case. And I think it also says even more that he didn't go full Jerry Jones and tell the Bills and Whaley and Monis, my pod co-host, and Sean McDermott, who had the final say, because, I mean, Whaley and Monis were fired the next day after this draft. Right. It says a lot about the owner to not just step in and say, give me my guy. I want Mahomes. He kind of let Sean do his thing. And if you're going to have a consolation prize, it might as well be one the next year who you can at least have that argument now might even be better than Patrick Mahomes. I can't get there yet because you got to do it in the playoffs. Mahomes has a Super Bowl ring. Like he's beat Josh Allen twice in the playoffs. So that's still a leap, but it's a conversation now, which is crazy. Yeah. So things worked out pretty well for Buffalo. So with that being the backdrop to everything, it just makes it fun as hell to see these guys compete, and we're going to see it again and again.
It's incredible, man. It's incredible. And you're right. Like, Josh, it's a conversation. I think it's a conversation that a lot of people in Buffalo just don't want to have, and they just want to say that Josh is better. But I agree. I think when you look at physical attributes, you can say, yeah, Josh can jump and run in ways that Patrick Mahomes can't. But Patrick Mahomes has shown so far that he can lead his team in ways that Josh hasn't. I'm not saying that he can't. He just hasn't. We don't have a Super Bowl, and I'm praying that this is the year, but we just don't have it yet. But man, it's absolutely fun to watch. Stephon Diggs and Gabriel Davis, like you mentioned, Gabriel Davis is a rising star, and Josh said over the summer, I don't look at Davis as a wide receiver too. He's a 1B to Stephon Diggs, and you can absolutely see it, man. He throws to both of those guys with a level of comfort and confidence that Baker Mayfield wish he had. Like he just wishes, and it's beautiful to watch, man. So look, We're going to get out of here soon. We have another show coming up. Last night typically is the John Fina, or it's the off tackle with John Fina with my man Joe Miller. They couldn't do it because they were at the KC game, so they were traveling today. So make sure I cut off on time here. So before I do, I didn't even get to talk about Go Long. I'm tripping here. I'm sorry, but
you're good. No, you've been showering me with love, Jake. Come on now, that's more than enough kindness from you.
Well, you know what? I really think, and so everybody, and most people in here know me, and they obviously follow, would think, and follow me on Twitter, and you follow me we follow each other. I've never had any negative interaction besides like our little Benny. I don't even want to call that a Benny.
I was going to say, we got to end with Benny the Butcher.
We got to talk about
how do we bury the lead?
I didn't even think about that at first. I didn't think about it till just now. That was the only time that I was like, what is Ty doing? But no, dude. And we talked about that privately, but for me, it was just, I was coming from a perspective that like, look, Benny, like you talked about Isaiah McKenzie, Benny comes from a neighborhood that I'm very familiar with. So to see him rise to the place where the Bills are like, yo, let's put this guy on, let's have him do the remix to the song. It was like, no hate to Benny. Like, I don't want any hate to Benny. And I love the professor as well. To me, it was like, it should be both. I just didn't want to put either one of them against each other in that sense.
I mean, I'm a shit stirrer sometimes. I'll admit I like being a contrarian, and I haven't listened, and I like rap. I really do. I haven't really listened to Benny the Butcher, and I saw the Mafia remake, and I guess that was on my mind at the time. I'm like, I don't know. I thought it was okay. And it just seemed like a really good opportunity to piss people like you off. And I took it. What can I say? I did. And it stirred. What kind of gets lost on Twitter, though, is like there's somebody says I was pissed at time.
I can't lie. Yeah.
You can't get the hint of like sarcasm on Twitter. Like, I really don't give a shit either way about Benny the Butcher. I haven't listened to his music. He might be amazing. I probably should give him a shot. So that'll be my homework after this show. But it was good to kind of whack away at the hornet's nest on Twitter for a few days.
Yeah, no, you got us riled up. You did. But hey, let everybody know where they can find. Obviously, first shout your book out again, where they can buy it. Shout out your website and anything else that you have coming up. Any good content that we should be plugged in for.
Hey, I appreciate the opportunity, man. The Blood and Guts, it's out now, so you can get it. Right in person, go to Barnes & Noble on McKinley. That's an option. And if you're like, most people, right on Amazon is probably the best way to go. So the Kindle's out, the hardcover, the audiobook. The audiobook, I've kind of gotten into Audible myself, and nobody wants to hear this voice for 12, 13 hours. So rest assured, you don't have to. There's a much better voice. His name's Alan Carson that narrated the book. It's awesome. He's got a very blood and gutsy voice to him. So that's an option as well. And yeah, golongtd.com. Always welcome your subscription. You don't have to pay right away. Hop on the free list for a while. Get a sense for Go Long, and you can always upgrade down the road. So that's always there. The Isaiah Show. I've got the podcast with Jim Monis, who was Doug Whaley's former right-hand man, and he's always got some wild stories to share. And man, we're staying busy, man. Yeah,
Jim
absolutely. And you know Jim, right?
Yeah.
We've talked to Jim.
Yeah. He came on the Code of Conduct a couple of times, had a great conversation. I might have to reach out to him again. Great guy. So shout out to Jim and Doug. Honestly, shout out to Doug. He, I know, again, Bills fans have certain feelings, but you know what? He had a good eye for talent. I think if he didn't miss on quarterback, there would be a completely different conversation about Doug Whaley. And that's just the way I see it. I could be wrong. Don't beat me up in the comments, guys. But I really feel like if he would have hit on a quarterback, I think we would have a different conversation. But ladies and gentlemen, you've just tuned into a great show where we got a lot of good information about tight ends and football in general. Ty, thank you so much, man. I can't wait. We got to do this again sometime.
100%, man. Did you just say the word? And we got to have you on our podcast too. Let's do a little home and home.
Let's do it. So ladies and gentlemen, y'all know how I do it here. Y'all love each other, take care of each other, and live in peace. And as always, stay positive, test negative, go Bills.
Code of Conduct.